Hello everyone, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I'm Dr. Neha, affiliated with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Today we are going to start with the module titled Gender and Development and Introduction from the course on Gender and Social Work. So firstly, we will be beginning with a kind of introduction where we highlight the role of gender in development. The basic purpose of the module is to introduce students to major debates within the field of gender and development. It examines various developments that have happened in the concepts of gender and development and how they have been adapted into theory and practice over decades until now. So basically, we trace a historical evolution of these three critical perspectives to study gender in development, which are given by Everett Geber, names like Women in Development, WID, Women and Development, WAD, and Gender in Development, GAD. So basically, we fundamentally introduce students to the main critical perspectives and so that a person can study and implement development issue and projects from gender lens. As we go on with the course, until the end of the course, we expect the students to understand the role of gender in development. The course also aims to engage the students in developing a critical understanding of the basic developments in the field of women in development. The course aims to engage students in learning about various perspectives within the field of gender and development from a historical perspective. So there has to be an understanding of connecting link between the theories of development and feminism by the time one finishes this module. We'll begin with an overview, and when we try to understand why gender and development, the important question that we need to answer is why gender? Why is it that we need to understand gender when we are talking about development? So development is a gender issue and gender is a development issue. We cannot understand, we cannot do development without discussing or understanding gender. And similarly, we cannot understand development, we cannot understand gender if we don't understand how development pans out and how is it impacted by gender and how it does impact gender. And increasingly now, after liberalization, technological advances and modernization, there has been development results which have affected women differently, which have affected women adversely, and because of newer forms of modes of development, women are being left behind from the fruits of development, and there are newer pressures on social relations of gender. Scholars for long have been examining until now the ways in which development processes affect and are affected by particular gender relations in a society, and it has been long established that there is a strong and significant relationship between women's status and level of development in any society. Even UN in its Sustainable Development Goals and earlier Millennium Development Goals considered women's empowerment, women's development as a very top priority in order to gain development in any society. So simultaneously, UN Women has also been consistently stressing on the significance of women development for development of the society and for social progress and social justice in any society. And with such recognition, since many decades, there have been various approaches, there have been changes in the approaches, but the way people have tried to understand the role of gender in development and the role of, if there is any role of gender in development over years. And so there have been various approaches that people have adopted, the scholars and practitioners have adopted until now. And we are going to study such developments in those approaches and what those approaches culminated to be and how we understand them today. If students want, they can have a look at box number 1, which has Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which concerns the current paper. And also when we talk about development in gender and development studies and practice and theory and discourses, it becomes very important to highlight the role played by women's world conferences which have been organized at various intervals in different cities of the world. And it's important to highlight the women's organizations and conferences which were organized at Mexico, Beijing, Nairobi, and Copenhagen. And because they have been fairly successful in putting gender as a topmost agenda in development globally. Development officials and professionals have been made to recognize during these conferences and post these conferences that women and men have different needs, they have different concerns, they have different opportunities, they have different constraints with respect to their development. And development process thus must be cognizant of these differences. So any development has to be gender aware, it cannot be gender blind. There has to be a very strong component of gender to understand how everybody women and men, how they are impacted differently. There is a list of links given to understand if somebody wants to visit and see what kind of discussions and debates and contributions were made during the conferences in each city. So one of the basic thrust of this paper is to highlight the theoretical evolution and intersection. So basically what we are trying to find out here is the number of frameworks within feminism and within development, and how they grew up to be, how they grew and how they developed over years, and how they intersected with each other to today give us specific approaches to study gender and development. So we are going to deal with this historically, and these intersections, how they culminated to be Vid, Vad and Gad. This is the focus of this particular section. We have to go back to 1930s if we have to discuss this, and we realize that when we look back there, the development efforts ignored women's existence until this period. Their concerns were not at all concern of development agenda makers, development practitioners or program makers. But soon, right after 1930s, Western development professionals followed the tenets of theory of modernization, wherein development was thought to be a linear progress, a linear path to progress. According to this theory, countries and societies could become developed by following a certain path from pre-modern to modern society, by following certain modern techniques, by believing in certain modern ideas, and by leaving behind their traditional beliefs, their traditional ideas, and by adopting new modern technologies and techniques. During the 1940s, 50s and 60s, this modernization theory was the primary approach with which development was aimed at. And during this period, US emerged as a major hegemonic power, and this United States became a model for development. Everybody wanted to adopt the same model to develop their own countries. Women, however, were invisible until now. They became visibilized in development debate or development discourses only after the arrival of Bozoruk's book in 1970. The book, Women's Role in Development, for the first time examines the role of women in development and the impact of development projects on the third world women. Before this, very few questioned the impact of economic prosperity across classes or races or gender groups. Bozoruk highlighted that modern development projects undermined women's economic roles, opportunities and autonomy. New technological trainings ignored women and reduced women's access to technology and paid work. Until now, it was believed, or it was asserted, that the benefits of economic development will trickle down to all women and men equally. But with the book, there came this realization that this was not happening. Women in the US also organized around this belief, and they started using the term women in development, and they tried to influence US policies. This women in development was the main approach during that time, which is also called WID. They took up gender issue in development and said that this trickle down is not happening. Women are not being impacted equally. Simultaneously, while these women were organizing themselves in the US, and there was this impact of Bozoruk's book, liberal feminism emerged during this time, and this called for equal opportunity and gender equality, primarily in paid work, primarily in education, and it focused on public sphere lives of women. Liberal feminists aimed at equal access to education, jobs, equal pay, and good working conditions for women. The target was legal changes. The kind of impact they wanted to seek for women in terms of development was to be sought legally. They tried to convince the lawmakers that certain rights have to be given to women so that women can be equal to men. This merging of liberal feminism and modernization development theory, which was predominant at that time, this merging of liberal feminism and this theory, the theory of feminism and theory of development, this merging is called women in development approach. It represents this merging. The main characteristic of this period was call for inclusion and integration. Again and again this call was made that we integrate women into development, that we include women in development so that they are also impacted equally and positively by development. So the planners were forced to plan with women in mind and to enhance women's participation in development. For the first time, there were dedicated researchers to understand women's experiences, to understand women's lives. Because of the researches, there was increased evidence to ask for what women wanted. We could prove for the first time that women are lacking in these aspects, and these aspects have to be taken care of. To ensure such improvement in women's various aspects of women's lives, women's active integration in development designs, policies and implementation was needed. It was acknowledged that women-sensitive policies would ultimately enhance economic development. Women were seen as to be needed for development. However, soon there were limitations of WID which were highlighted. As the approach relies on modernization theory, it ignored the potential of indigenous knowledge systems. It also ignored women's other identities. It saw women as women. Women's other identities in terms of their caste, class, ethnicity, etc. were completely ignored. And also, in most cases, women's integration was merely co-opted into development programs. The integration was also not matched with adequate funds and political leverage. Most significantly, WID projects relied mostly on state support and saw state as a solution to women's problems, which was a problematic issue because so many times state itself is a patriarchal institution, and thus WID approach fails to see state in a problematic view. Many women and many women's groups, especially in third world, they ignored the tenets of WID projects, and they organized themselves around their issues, and they were completely anti-of or at least partially anti-of liberal feminist and WID approaches. They said that they do not need a patriarchal mainstream development makers like state, and they sought development and solutions for women within development within women. So basically, while while WID had its limitations, it had limitations because there were limitations of modernization theory upon which it relied so much. So within the debate on development, there was this movement from focus on modernization theories towards Marxism. But then again, this approach also had little to say about women, as the focus within Marxism was largely capitalist system. Still, many influential feminists adopted Marxist paradigm and examined women's lives by recognizing the role of reproductive labor, their productive labor, and the role of class in women's life. Simultaneously, dependency theory came into picture, and this was also influenced by Marxism. And herein, they said that the underdevelopment of any society or a section is not an internal issue, it's something which is affected by outside forces. And the underdevelopment of a society was seen to be created and maintained by developed societies and developed countries. It is argued that capitalist center metropolis exploited and gained from peripheral third world, and the capitalist system functioned in a manner that perpetuated this dependency. So basically, this was a dependency theory which came into prominence around this period, and WAD approach draws from this dependency theory and radical feminism approach, which again came during the same time. This radical feminism approach argued against the integration and focused on women-only organizing. They sought solution within women's groups, and they denied the support from patriarchal structures and men and state. So a WAD approach again was criticized for the basic limitation. The most important or biggest limitation of this approach was that there was little support from mainstream structures, because WAD approach practitioners did not seek support from the state. So when women organized around themselves, the projects were mainly very small scale, and they lacked funding from the support. And WAD has also been interestingly criticized for treating women as a class and for ignoring differences within the class of women. Thus, by the 1980s, some feminists became unconvinced with both the approaches, WID and WAD, and sought an approach that addresses structural constraints, vulnerabilities, factors that create and maintain gender relations which are unequal. GAD then in the 1980s came as a response to the call for such an approach. This approach covered empowerment and gender-aware planning approaches. Originating in the experiences and writings of the third world feminists and articulated by Development Alternatives with Women for a New Era, Dawn, which was launched at 1985 Nairobi Conference, this approach to women's development recognized the importance of gender and global inequities. So there was this talk from it was not about women and men anymore. It was more about gender relations, gender roles, and gender as a category, which should be the focus to understand development, to implement development. This approach also has its basis in the analysis of socialist feminists. So now they moved from radical feminists, and now the GAD approach practitioners and policymakers, they adopted socialist feminist ideas and their tenets, drawing from which GAD recognizes the role of material as well as the cultural, the patriarchal structures, the capitalist structures, the economic systems, all of them having a role in creating and maintaining women's subordinate status. And by the 1990s and later, all the approaches until now converged. While WIT continues to be the working approach in most government policies and programs even till date, many NGOs are continuing with WAD approach, where they organize women around certain issues and work a little away from governmental dictates. So GAD approach now, because of its more comprehensive view to understand development, to do development, is now being adopted and shaped to suit the contextual needs of the society within which a development project is to be implemented. However, it can be said that GAD approach, though it comes with lots of promises and it has a very comprehensive understanding and perhaps solutions to women's issues, it is still being seen as an approach which is co-opted or which is taken into the architecture of a project to please men, to kind of assure them that it's not only about women, it is also about you. So that's where it is not really a good thing. Also, GAD is being seen as a fancy label. So it is the thing to do. It is the kind of approach which everybody should be doing. So we are also doing the same thing. But in practice, it might not be affecting at the level at which it should be doing. Thus, one can see how different frameworks within development and within feminism evolved, and then how they intersected at each interval to come up with WAD and GAD. In the next section, we discuss how has the policy and practice of gender and development been in India. Social welfare had always been part of the plan for India. So we had planned development. Women's issues were seen as social welfare issues. It was thus social welfare was a very significant component for the development plans, programs, and projects. However, when there was this attempt to do something about women, those attempts were not moving beyond welfaristic measures or kind of providing women little more education or little more jobs. So this is how it was until very late, and it was in the sixth plan. It was in the sixth plan that a marked shift occurred, and women's role in development was highlighted as being deserving of, or as being needy of very specific funding, very specific efforts, and very specific manual resources. From this plan onwards, from sixth plan onwards, women secured a dedicated space in the national plans and planning processes, primarily with thrust on health, education, and employment. The seventh five-year plan moved towards generating awareness among women about their rights. So now we moved from welfare to rights. There was the small shift which happened. The period emphasized the need to open new avenues of work for women and recognize the importance of women in contributing to the various socio-economic, political, and cultural activities. Another distinctive feature of the period was the recognition for need of organization of women. This was very important during the time. Women were organized around certain issues by governmental and non-governmental organizations. Thus, the plan reflected WIT as well as WAD approach until now. But eighth plan marks a very profound shift in India's state approach towards gender and development in the society, and it was during this period, during this plan, that women's empowerment was recognized. There was a recognition for the need to empower women, not to be providing them some welfaristic measures or not to be giving them some kind of support to develop them, but rather focus was on empowerment. Empowerment was also seen as a distinct strategy The concept of empowerment was introduced at the International Women's Conference at Nairobi during the same time by women delegates from the Global South. It calls for redistribution of social power and control of resources in favor of women in the development planning as well as in action. Ninth plan recognized the significance of providing enabling gender-sensitive environment. Gender sensitization and training programs for participants were started in development meetings and in public as well as private sectors. From this plan onwards, planning in India reflects a convergence of WID, WAD and GAD. The next plan called for collectively aiming at socio-economic empowerment and gender justice. During 11th plan, it was during this stage that gender was recognized as a cross-cutting theme across sectors within development. So we see that India has, as a state, changed its approach towards women over years, and it has been in line with the changes in approach all over the world, and we have seen a move towards empowerment approach and gender-sensitive environment while making or implementing any development project. But still, women development in practice does not go beyond providing economic opportunities for women in most cases. Gender bias persists in planning as well as implementation. The development programs aimed at women are, in a way, most of the times based in the patriarchal society, and thus only end up reinforcing this discrimination and social exclusion of women. In case of India, gender interacts with women's other identities like caste, class, and these have impact for how a woman reaps the benefits of development or how she is denied the benefits of development. These kind of intersections, their multiple identities and how they impact development or how they are impacted by development, these issues are still not carefully and dedicatedly taken care of in our development debates and practice till date. The next section, we see what is currently happening, what is the present scenario around debates, what are the kind of debates that are happening in contemporary times, and which are the primary approaches with which people are seeing gender practice and gender debate. This section focuses on debates and developments coming out of Global South, and because there has been this critique from the Global South of the Western idea of development and Western idea of feminism, and it highlights the specific problems therefore faced by the women of the South as a result of economic restructuring, globalization and liberalization, all of which have come from Western ways of doing development. As we know, 1990s in India was characterized by economic restructuring, globalization, spread of MNCs, etc. There was all of this had impact on women adversely, and it has been well proven by various studies until now. Jobs became feminized. Women were forced into informal labor most of the times. They had to do more work. They had to find more work. They participated in more paid work, but at the same time, they had to take care of their domestic responsibilities because men were not coming to participate in taking care of those domestic responsibilities with them. So this made it necessary to think about gender and development in the Global South after this kind of new economic restructuring in a different manner. The new development thinking does now challenge mainstream development discourse. It calls for perspectives that acknowledge the particular experiences of people in their particular society. It acknowledges and recognizes and stresses upon local voices, local knowledge systems, and how they are important to do development in their people's immediate context, in their own societies. Rather than the great knowledges and technological sciences, the postmodernists, which are the current thinkers now, and post-developmentalists, they acknowledge local systems, indigenous systems, and they seek solutions of women and solutions of development, solutions of the problems of development within these indigenous structures. They also say that theories and ways of doing development from the West are also kind of bringing with them some kind of hierarchical power where they are more powerful, they are more important. However, this kind of power relation in language of development, in the discourse of development, is something which they challenge. The new visions of development emphasize on the sensitivity towards the races, the race issue, the class issue, the gender issue. Each group may thus have its own forms of resistance because they are coming from a particular class, a caste, or a race, etc. So their solutions also come from the context within which they are placed. Their socio-spatial locations bring their constraints as well as vulnerabilities, and at the same time they are the ones which should be important in understanding and finding solutions for the problems they are facing in their immediate context. Third world feminists have been at the forefront and have made major contributions to alternative theorizing on gender and development, and also on the theorizing about power. They focus on poverty among women and on the global economic inequalities. They recognize and they bring to the fore that the problems of women in the South cannot be same or cannot be treated as same as the problems of women in the West, in a developed country. They distinguish themselves by placing the solutions of women's issues in their own experiences and realities. Indian feminism flourished in the 1980s and has seen the creation of organizations like Center for Women's Development Societies, for example. So it is by the third world feminists and post-development feminists, etc., that previously ignored and silenced voices have been brought to the fore, and it has been put at the equal level with the more powerful hierarchical knowledge systems that have come from the debates within gender and feminism in the West. From India, it is important to highlight the contribution made by, for example, Vandana Shiva and Beena Agarwal for asserting the relationship between women's environmental knowledge and sustainable development of the society. So thus, the current development debates as we see today are concerned with changing world. They see that the world is changing, the development, the way of doing development is changing, and it is bringing with itself changes in the problems that people are facing now, the new kind of problems, and how the new problems have to be given new solutions, and those solutions have to be sought in the immediate context where the problems lie. So basically, we see over the course of our module that there have been various frameworks which have been evolved, which have been developed over decades to understand development and to understand feminism. So both these development frameworks as well as feminism frameworks interacted with each other, influenced each other, informed each other, and culminated into three major gender and development approaches that we have: WID, WAD, and GAD. And each term is associated with certain assumptions, each term has its challenges, each term comes with its strengths, and therefore it becomes important to not totally ignore one approach or not totally adopt any of the approaches without actually being attentive to the immediate context within which the approach has to be adopted to understand or to implement development projects or plans in a particular country. We understand that during the course of the module, there have been certain things that have been pointed out, and after understanding those kind of debates, those kind of issues, concepts, there may be perhaps certain points which can be pondered over. They have been given and students can think about them, and there are certain references on the list which can be which can be and should be looked into to have a further insight about the issues, debates, and developments that have been discussed during the course of the module. And I thank you all for participating in the module class. Thank you.